What is up, everyone? Welcome to week 2 and episode 2 of the Fantasy Cheat Sheet podcast, the show where we bring you 10 cheats that you need to know heading into this weekend's games. As always, the Fantasy Cheat Sheet podcast is a member of the Going for Two Live network of shows. You could follow Going for Two Live so you never miss an episode on Twitter at Going for Two Live, or subscribe to the Going for Two Live YouTube page. I'm your host, Jay Christensen. You can find me on Twitter at JAYC_DFF. And I'm joined by my two co-hosts. First, you can find him at Drop the Mike FF. We have Mike Hicks. How you doing tonight, Mike?
What's going on, Jay? Just glad to be here. Talk some more football. Let's get this going.
Yeah, let's go. And we are also joined by our other co-host at EV_RITT3 on Twitter, Evan Ritter. What's going on, Evan?
How's it going, guys? Glad to be here for another week 2. I think we, did all right on our debut week 1. Maybe not my personal takes, but we'll get into that. So let's go ahead and get this thing started, fellas.
I think we were close. I think we we're about like 750, maybe. Maybe over 500. I think.
Yeah, from you two. I was my Brandon Ayuk take. Like I said, we'll get into that.
You meant Debo. You meant to say Debo.
That exactly.
For some reason, I don't know what you say.
Exactly.
I mean, I like the running game. It was just not Mostert. It was Elijah Mitchell. We all knew that was coming. So
yeah, I had parts of it.
yeah, as long as you're in the ballpark, it's process, not necessarily the result. It's all about getting the process right. So I'm sure that's going to happen again this week, in the wild world of fantasy. Obviously, week 1 was really interesting. We're kicking things off. We're going to recap a little bit of last night's game. Speaking of interesting, that was a weird game, a good game, but also kind of a cluster. Really, both teams didn't really seem like they wanted to win by the end. We're, of course, talking about the Washington football team. They defeated the New York Giants 30-29 on a last-second field goal by Dustin Hopkins. A game at the end where each team tried to give it away. Heineke throws an interception, and then the Giants, are up and they go off sides. When the field goal is missed by Hopkins, he gets a second chance. He puts it through the second time to give the football team the win. Interesting game. I'm going to get to your reactions in a second, but really a game where both quarterbacks were really on point, throwing just around 70% completion percentage, moving the ball, big plays. So good performances by Heineke and Jones in that game. But let me throw it to you guys. I want to hear give me a one takeaway from this game. What did you learn from it? What did you find interesting in the game? We'll start with you, Evan.
Yeah, so starting off, I lost on the Giants money line. So that was kind of disappointing. I did hit on the over, but man, it would have been a huge plus to go 2 for 2 and have a decent payout last night. But hey, that's one game, and that's the joys of sports betting. So on to Sunday, right? I also traded away McLaurin right before the game, in kind of hopes that with Heineke at the helm, that maybe he'd get a little, tick down in production. That also did not go my way. It seems that McLaurin is, the Allen Robinson of the NFC East. I do still have a ton of stock in him, so I'm not beating myself up over it. But yeah, as far as the game goes, Daniel Jones looked great. He really did. He didn't let the turf monster get him. He looked wonderful running the ball, and he had 0 turnovers. I never thought I'd say that about a game that Daniel Jones played. And it also looks like Sterling Shepard is the wide receiver to own in New York. So if he's somehow still on waivers, please go ahead and pick him up. And then no better way to go ahead and wrap this take up than with Saquon Barkley. He saw an increase in rushes last night, just up from 10 the previous week to 13 last night. We did see him pull off a big run, which he showed a decent amount of burst, I think. He's still far from 100% in my opinion. But with the extra rest this week, I think the upcoming game against the Falcons is going to be the matchup we finally get to see the Saquon we've all been waiting for. So yeah, that's my take on the game last night. It was honestly, I thought it was going to be one of those duds, but it actually turned out to be a really exciting game. And damn, it's you can't deny that Heineke looked good. He controlled that offense, and he looks like he's going to be able to, at least as far as fantasy goes, still make those players relevant.
Yeah, it was definitely an entertaining game, to say the least. It was definitely not a dud for sure. Mike, what's your takeaway from last night's game?
All right, so Evan, you made a mistake selling Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, I'm so pumped about this one because Terry McLaurin is a freaking beast, and he is definitely the next A-Rob, not of the NFC East. He is the next A-Rob of the entire NFL. His 7 quarterbacks he has ever played with are Case Keenum, Dwayne Haskins, Colt McCoy, Alex Smith, who, yes, I am biased because of Chiefs fan, but he is not a great quarterback. Kyle Allen, Ryan Fitzpatrick for what? Half a game? And now Taylor Heineke. If you're telling me this guy is not quarterback proof, you're just lying to yourself. I put a tweet out today because there was people telling me that he is quarterback proof. I mean, 11 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown with Taylor Heineke. He's proving over and over in this 2.5 or what, his 3rd season in the league, that he can do it with no matter who his quarterback is. And this is going to continue. And I don't see this stopping. Yes, he's going to have down games like any other guy, but I had him right in my top 10 for redraft and for dynasty, and it's not going to stop. And even with the quarterback situation, imagine when he gets a real good quarterback in a year or two, when maybe they get somebody, hopefully in a draft or a free agent. The world is his oyster, and Terry McLaurin, I absolutely love. F1, Scary Terry, whatever you want to call him.
In my defense, Mike, I just want to run across the trade. I ended up trading McLaurin and James Robinson for A.J. Brown and Miles Sanders.
Well, I don't hate that. Yeah.
I don't hate that. I'm just making sure. That's why I'm not beating myself. I'm not beating myself up too bad. Yeah, exactly. It just hurts that you see a guy go off that you just traded. Yeah.
I'll be honest. As soon as that game got over, I was waiting for this part of the show because I was so pumped about Terry.
Yeah, no, he was great. A-Rob's such a great comp because it's the same thing. No quarterbacks his entire career, but just continues to produce. It doesn't really matter who's there, and we're always waiting for that day when they actually have a good passer there.
Yeah, I will have to. Sorry, Jay. I will have to shout out Gladys from Going for Two Live for that comp. She had that comp on Sunday. On the show on Sunday this past week, and I kind of stole that from her. So I just wanted to shout out Gladys for that one.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, to make you feel better, I benched Daniel Jones in Superflex, and he scored like 30 points. So that hurt. But, yeah.
So did I.
Made sense, but just one of those things. Every time you do something like that, it comes to bite you. But my takeaway from the game, those are really good ones. I just thought one quick one is Giants just moving the ball that game. Daniel Jones really, the completion percentage, was able to run. That read option was really working well, and he was able to get chunk plays like that. It makes me think we've been afraid of this Washington D, and it worked out last week. Herbert didn't have a great fantasy day, but he was really moving the ball well on their defense last week too, for over 300 yards. And my takeaway is a little bit like maybe we don't have to be afraid of this defense quite as much as we were coming in. And this tends to happen with defenses when you come into the year sometimes. Sometimes it seems preseason like, I got to be afraid of this matchup or that matchup, and things can change quickly. So I put some stock into it, but I don't want to put too much there. So this Washington D, they play the Buffalo next. I don't think I'm necessarily fading any of my Bills in that game for that matchup. I believe it's in Buffalo as well. So that defense just they're supposed to get to the quarterback, and they really weren't doing that last night. A couple sacks or hurries, but really the Giants were able to move the ball really well in that game. So like I said, I don't know if you have to necessarily fear the Washington football team's defense quite as much. So that was just a quick takeaway there, but all in all, some interesting stuff there, and we'll see where those two teams go from here.
To your point, Jay, if they with that read option, if they can, if Saquon can kind of finally get back to form, it could even be deadlier.
I like that for him. If you're starting to fear Jones, it's a good point. Yeah. From when he keeps it, you're going to start to bite. that could open up some things for Saquon, which would
Exactly.
be nice. Who still looked better, but to your point on Saquon, Turf Monster got him a little bit. He seemed to slip. It's just not quite totally there with his knee. It was a step in the right direction, but need more from him going forward. And I think, hopefully next game we'll see more of the Saquon of old. But let's jump over to our 10 topics of the week, or 10 sheets of the week, our list, where we count down the 10 things you really need to know heading into this weekend. We're going to go around this round robin style like we usually do, and we will kick things off with you, Evan, at the top. Give us your first topic of the week.
So my first topic of the week is going to be Stefon Diggs. I think he's going to have a big bounce back game going up against the Dolphins. We know they have the best cornerback duo in the league. No one's going to argue that. And PFF is one of, my go-tos as far as stats and kind of, going over things for DFS and lineups and everything. And they have a cornerback wide receiver chart that I like to look over for matchups. And it projects, both Xavier Howard and Byron Jones to pretty much split coverage on Diggs 50-50. In Miami last year, they were top 10 in the NFL in frequency of man coverage, coming in over at just over 55%. And this is according to ESPN and Next Gen Stats. But, at the end of the day, I think Stefon Diggs is a route running savant. He was top 4 in yards per route run last year. And yes, like I said, Miami has 2 elite quarterbacks. But in today's NFL, I think good offense is going to be good defense every single time. In the 2 games last year, Diggs faced Miami, he had 19 catches, 278 yards, and a touchdown. So I just think in week 2, we can go ahead and expect Diggs to have a big game, show everybody why he was the leading receiver in 2020. And for that matter, if he's going to have a big game, expect Josh Allen to have a nice game as well and show why he was the number 1 fantasy quarterback in 2020. So I just think the Bills have a nice bounce back game. And like I said, why the cornerbacks are, elite by anyone's measurements. Diggs, I think, is going to, against that, if he gets man, he's going to be able to show him why he was the best receiver last year.
Nice. I like that. Mike, what are your thoughts on the take here on Stefon Diggs bouncing back this week?
100% in agreement. I have to add that Josh Allen, I'm a big Josh Allen fan, but Josh Allen is undefeated and dominates the Miami Dolphins as a team. So with Diggs the way he is, and I also want to add that I am surprised how much they targeted Cole Beasley, but if the more that happens and the more they get Gabe Davis involved, the more that's going to open it up for Diggs. And exactly what Evan's saying with everything that he has said, Diggs is just going to open the ball more, and maybe last year wasn't a mirage. Maybe that's what's more to come.
Yeah, just looking at those stats there, 19 catches last year. 19.
278 yards. Yep.
2 games.
Yeah, it's only 2
Almost
games.
average.
Yeah, exactly.
2 games. Not counting preseason or anything like that. That's, they really owned Miami last year. They really dominated those 2 matchups. I'm 100% in agreement as well. It's a good matchup there, and I think that's going to be a bounce back, especially how kind of poorly they did against Pittsburgh last week. I really look for a bounce back with Buffalo this week. I think that's a good take. All right, we'll move on to number 2, our second topic of the week, and we'll throw this over to you, Mike. What do you got for your first topic of the day?
All right, so Mr. Najee Harris. Yes, he was not a great game last week, but the hype coming out of Alabama was that he was going to be, the man. And when he was the man, and this is the stats that I have about being the man is this, he was on the field every offensive snap that Pittsburgh ran. Not once did they pull him off the field. I don't care if you're a rookie. I don't care if you're Saquon Barkley or CMC. If you're on the field every play of the game, that shows that the team has some trust in you. 95% opportunity share from running backs. So 95% of the time that the running back got the ball or a target was to Najee Harris. Yes, he only had 16 attempts and 45 yards and 1 catch on 3 targets. I want to shout out Dave Wright at FF Spaceman on Twitter. I'm buddies with him, and that's where he's great at analytics. He has a database every week. That's where I pull these numbers from. But the biggest thing is the Raiders. I understand they went up against Lamar Jackson, but the Raiders gave up 189 yards rushing on the ground. I believe this is going to be a bounce back game. I'm not expecting him to go out and, 150 yards and 3 touchdowns or anything like that. But if he got 100 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns, I would not be surprised. And I also believe that the game script is going to be in Pittsburgh's favor, and they're going to be ahead, and they're going to run the ball because the Vegas Raiders are going to have to throw the ball.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Evan? What's your thoughts on Najee? Well, both what you saw last week and then heading into this week for a bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, last week you obviously I had a prop bet on Najee Harris to go over 64 rushing yards, and I thought that was a lock. Unfortunately, that didn't come to fruition. We only saw 49 yards from scrimmage. I mean, on 17 touches, and we all knew that going in, Pittsburgh's offensive line was going to maybe be the downfall of Najee if there was any. But to Mike's point, I mean, the opportunity share and the volume this guy's going to get is unreal. And that's why you drafted him, is exactly for the volume. So you're not sitting Najee by any means based off of week 1. The volume he's going to get moving forward is going to, lock him in as a top fantasy option. And I just love Najee, especially this week. I mean, going up against a Vegas defense who they gave up 25 points to a Baltimore backfield that, are picking up guys off the streets. So I think Najee Harris is going to have a huge week. So, yeah, I mean, I love Najee Harris this week. And to Mike's point, the stats he laid out there for you just shows you why.
Yeah, we were talking up. You had to go down to all the way to Latavius Murray on that Baltimore team. I were really liking that matchup and going into last week against the Raiders, but they kept losing guys, and it's still. I mean, they did pretty well, all things considered, versus that. So you got to think a running back like Najee Harris, it can certainly bounce back, and laid out the perfect stats for it. It's just. No one else is out there. I mean, you're not seeing anybody. You're not seeing Kalen Ballage or any of the other backups on Pittsburgh there. So it's really his show. So you got to think just from sheer volume this week in a more favorable matchup, things should go Najee Harris's way, and we should see a lot better things from him.
Yeah. One more thing is we kind of shed light on it last week as well. Is Big Ben just does not. He doesn't look good, man. Trying to move around in that pocket, he does not look, he's never that he's been the most nimble man ever, but he looks like he's really on a decline. And I know, preseason reports were out of camp where that he was really zinging the ball around and he had some zip on his passes. I don't know if you guys saw it. I didn't see it in week 1. So I think that also bodes well for Najee this week. Maybe they try to, get him some more, reception, some more targets in the passing game, and maybe some even more touches on the ground game.
Yeah, for sure. Big Ben, I remember the last preseason game I watched, he looked pretty solid, and then this one not so much. It's just that whole game was kind of disjointed in terms of both offenses struggled, both defenses looked pretty good, and just fantasy points were hard to come by in that particular game. I'm going to jump over now to my number 3 for the third topic of the week here. So we all like Najee Harris. We like Stephon Diggs. We'll see if we're in agreement here. I think we might be. The Atlanta passing game, particularly Matt Ryan, I'm betting on a bounce back from the Falcons this week. They are going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think this starts with Matt Ryan, really. I think he's a good second QB option in Superflex this week. And it's really all about that matchup with the Bucs. That's a team he did very, very well against last year. If you go back to his 2 games last year against the Buccaneers, he had 27 fantasy points one game, 22 another one. Threw for pretty much combined 68% passing, 621 yards. So he's averaging over 300 yards against them and 5 touchdowns. And we already saw last week with the Buccaneers going against the Dallas Cowboys, their defense was not looking quite as good, particularly against the pass, considering Dallas didn't try to run against them. Weren't really shutting down Dallas at all. They lost Sean Murphy Bunting in that game, so there's some issues in the secondary there. And just overall, I think you got to think that Atlanta's going to have a similar strategy going into the Buccaneers in terms of potentially not running the ball as well. I don't know why it would be any different there. The running game's not necessarily their strength either. So I think it's going to be a lot of passing from Matt Ryan, who still had to pass the ball a pretty good amount last week. The offense just wasn't totally in sync. But look for guys like Ridley to bounce back this week, and Kyle Pitts, who was involved very much last week, but just couldn't hook up last week. Pitts still sitting with a 69% snap share last week, had 22% target share, 7 targets, but just weren't hitting in the right spots and making big plays. So I think that changes a little bit this week. I think Pitts will still be involved. And a nice little deeper one to mention here, Hunter Hurst still on the field a lot as well. So they're running 2 tight ends out there a lot. So he's another one you could think about deeper down the tight end. The depths at tight end there. Had 4 receptions, had 4 targets himself. So he's still on the field. He's still involved. So I really like that Falcons team to bounce back this week and for all of those guys to have good days in fantasy for your team. What do you guys think about that? We'll start with you, Mike.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know me and you talked off air real quick before the show. I love this take of yours. I absolutely agree. I just hope they get Russell Gage a little more involved, because I think that'll also open up for everybody.
Yeah, he had like 0 last week. Like, it was
he got a goose egg. He got a goose egg.
Yeah.
Since we're on the topic of this game, really, really quick, I want to address one of the comments. I don't think, personally, they're asking if Brown is the number 1 target in Tampa. I still think it could be Godwin, but Brown, I think, is going to eat into. I think it's going to be Brown and Godwin more than Evans now. I think Evans is the one that might be in trouble.
He certainly seemed like he was the one in trouble last week for sure. Just he's out there a lot, but
he was 100%. He had 100%. He had 100% snap rate.
Yeah, he's out there,
and you still didn't see him.
Yeah, it's clear that Tom just doesn't seem to look his way. Particularly when Brown's out. Brown's out there. He's generally getting the ball, it seems. It's just,
Yeah, he loves that freaking guy, man. It's just, he's came out and said it. It's just whatever they have going on. Brady has made it known that he loves him some Antonio Brown. And if Antonio Brown's out there, he's going to try to find ways to get him the ball. The same with Gronk. Last week you saw you saw how many reps those guys have had together just come into play, where Gronk, kind of faded into the end zone and just knew exactly what Brady wanted him to do. And that just comes from repetition. Brady has made it known that he just loves Gronk. He loves Antonio Brown. But I still think it's Chris Godwin as well. He showed that too in week 1. Chris Godwin saw an umpteen amount of targets. He had the fumble and a drop pass, but I still think Antonio Brown's going to be the big play threat, but I think Godwin's going to be the volume guy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think you could expect similar things to week 1 going forward. Evans is he's going to be a little boomer bust. He'll have a big game at some point. He'll catch something down the field and have one of those big games. But yeah, Godwin, target monster. I see that continuing. So that's another point to Atlanta this week. Let's flip it back there. I don't expect Tampa Bay to slow down scoring. I think you're going to have to score with them. We saw the Eagles look really good last week. Jalen Hurts throwing ball. If he's accurate versus a defense, I would expect Tom Brady to be equally as accurate or more. So I would expect them to score as well. Are you with that too? Just to wrap up Atlanta there. You on board with Atlanta bounce back this week, Evan?
Honestly, Matt Ryan's a fade of mine this week. To be honest with you, man, I don't think this. I think to your point that they're going to have to throw a ton. We saw the Cowboys, kind of went with that game plan and it seemed to work. But I think there's better options and better matchups to target this week. So Matt Ryan's a fade of mine, and Mike Davis. I do not think they want to run that man into that defensive front. Cowboys didn't want to run Ezekiel Elliott. I do not think the Atlanta Falcons want to run a 28-year-old Mike Davis into that defensive front. So volume is king. Maybe Matt Ryan, has to pass the ball enough. He does have weapons in Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts and we saw that secondary in Tampa get eaten up last week, by the talent in Dallas. But to be honest with you, man, Matt Ryan's a fade of mine, just because, like I said, I think there's better matchups to target this week.
Yeah, I don't know if he would crack my top 12, but he's certainly, for me, I think just he's a solid super flex play. That would be my
solid super flex.
Gotcha. That's my thought with Matt Ryan there. Which super fly, you go 24 deep on quarterback.
Yeah.
You get pretty thin there at the end. But I do think they'll throw a lot. So
I'm starting Teddy over Matt Ryan this week.
Yeah, Teddy look good. That's another juicy match. We'll be getting to that matchup as well. There's a lot of nice matchups this week in terms of weak defenses or games that we think will be high scoring, I think, going into this week. All right, let's get to our next topic of the week. We're back to you, Evan, with number 4.
All right, number 4, I'm going to shed a little light on Matt Stafford and the Rams offense. With Matt Stafford at the helm, I think this Rams offense is going to be a freaking juggernaut. But I mainly want to kind of talk about Higbee. I think Higbee is finally in for that breakout season, in this offense that we've all been waiting for and all been kind of, touting for the last few seasons. I absolutely loved his ADP, which Fantasy Pros has had around, number 111, which is like usually the 12th, which was the 12th tight end taken off the board. So he was always a target of mine late in drafts this year, especially if I didn't get one of the big three, the Wallers, the Kelce's, the Kittles. So here's why. We saw him play literally 100% of offensive snaps in week 1. That's super rare for a tight end. So the opportunity and the playing time alone, I think, locks him in as a top 10 tight end the rest of the season. But in this high-powered Rams offense, with the amount of scoring and red zone opportunities that the Rams are going to see, which in turn Higbee's going to see, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up as a top 5 tight end or better. Especially, if the unfortunate injury bug hits Bobby Trees or Cooper Kupp, and either one of them were to miss time, I think you can easily lock them in as a top 10, but like I said, with top 5 potential or better. And looking over, some teams that, just in leagues of mine doing PLP, stuff like that, I've seen teams where Higbee is, team's second tight end on their roster. He only had a start percentage this past week of 58% on Sleeper. So that tells me people still aren't really sold on him. But if it's me, I'm going to trade for Higbee and I'm going to reap the rewards of the volume that I think he's going to receive in this Rams offense.
So to the comment here, they're asking Higbee or Pitts? I would guess that's for this week, but who are you going with this week if you had to start one? Higbee or Kyle Pitts?
So in DFS last week, I faded Pitts. Man, I love me some Higbee, but man, is it hard to sit Pitts. The guy is just super talented. So that's really tough. I know what your heart says, but go with the brain.
Yeah,
I really want to start Higbee, but man, is it hard to sit Pitts, So if I had to pick one, I would still, it would be tough to sit Pitts, especially in season long, man.
Yeah, I would go Pitts as well, just for basically what I talked about. I think that's a bounce back for him this week too. Higbee was impressed when I went through the stats to your Higbee points. I'm with you there. I don't know if I'm quite as in on Higbee as you, but it was encouraging. Just his involvement was really impressive. His target share there, more than Woods. Woods was weirdly not quite as involved. That touchdown at the end kind of saved his day, which was interesting. I'm not totally sure what was going on there, but Higbee very involved, and at the tight end position, you move right up the ranks there. So, really interested and see where it goes with Higbee from here.
We saw Russell Wilson, carve this Colts team up last week. So, who knows, man? But like I said, in DFS, though, I am definitely going to be taking a lot of shots on Higbee. In season long, though, like I said, I think it's just hard to sit Pitts.
Sure.
Because of the upside that he has, But like I'm saying, I not only am I looking to this week, but I'm looking, down the road for full season. I really like the outlook for Higbee.
Nice. So we like some Higbee here. Mike, let's go to number 5 here. Let's go to your next cheat of the week. This is number 5 overall.
All right. So if I told you both, I know you guys both know who it is, but if I told you both beforehand that a running back had 29 touches or 33 touches, 29 carries, and 4 catches in week 1, would you guess that it was Joe Mixon?
Now I would have said, "Oh, Christian McCaffrey's back, baby!" Right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I completely agree with you. I was astonished when I saw these numbers. I think it was like 129 rushing yards or total. I can't remember if it was rushing yards or total yards. The reason I bring this up is there's a lot of people that are back on the Joe Mixon hype train before the season, and now that he did this in week 1 against Minnesota's defense, they are taking the victory laps all over Twitter. I am here to tell you, pull the reins back. Do I think he's going to have a decent year? Yes, but do I think that he's going to have what people think is going to be a great year and like some people think he's going to be back in the top 10 or 12? I still don't think that's the case. He is on pace, if this was to continue, for over 500 touches. That's not going to happen. We all know that's not possible. In 2019 was his biggest year for touches. He had 313 total touches. We don't know what Zach Taylor really is as a coach. I still don't believe in Zach Taylor as a coach. I don't trust him with Joe Mixon yet. I don't trust him with that offense. The one thing I will say is he's going to throw the ball with Joe Burrow because you have the weapons on the outside. I mean, when you have Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, you have to throw the ball. On those 29 carries, he had 10 evaded tackles and a 30% juke rate. So when you break a tackle on 30% of your carries, that's not sustainable in my opinion. So my suggestion is temper your expectations of Mixon out this week. Could he still have a good week against Chicago? Yes. Could he have a good year? But I do not expect him to break the top 12 in season long.
Oh, big 12. Wow. Yeah. I would think if he stays healthy, you almost have to make the top 12 just because running back it always goes that way. But to your point, he did start off really hot last year, and then the injury got him. So that put him out.
I say top 15.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you never know. I think just it's the thing with him is like he's almost similar to the situation Najee. Like there's just no one else there.
Yeah.
After Gio they have Samaje Perine and Chris Evans. I don't think Evans played last week. So I don't know who gets. I like your point of he can't, like, that's probably not sustainable for Mixon, nor a good idea probably for someone who has an injury history. But at the same time, I don't know who takes enough touches away in the right spots to necessarily hurt him. And if he stays healthy, I think he just has to fall into the top 12 because that's just, if you're a volume back and you play you play 16 games, you're probably finishing top 12. But I'm not a huge Mixon guy either, but just seeing last week, like there's just no one there in the past. If he can sustain like around 4 catches a game, that's something he's never really had before. So that, unfortunately, I want to see a bigger sample size, for sure. Give me 3-4 games, but that's a good step in the right direction for Mixon, I guess. If you have him rostered, you're feeling good. I wouldn't take victory. I don't think anybody should take victory laps after 1 week on Twitter, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, that's
but
a whole nother ball
a
game.
good step in the right direction for Mixon, but maybe a little bit tougher matchup. I think that Vikings defense is pretty bad, so we'll see what he does this week. Evan, you in or out on Mixon?
Oh, I'm so in on Mixon, man. I've been in on Mixon since the start of the season. I love the guy. Like you said, Gio's not there anymore. He's not there to take any of the passing down work from him. He's not there to keep him off the field in 2-minute drills. All the volume is going to be funneled through Joe Mixon. And I mean, I just think with that volume alone, he is going to give you surefire RB1 numbers. When he has seen 70% of the snap share, he's put up RB1 numbers over 60% of the time. The only thing that he needs to, bounce back from is the health concerns. And to Mike's point, I don't think that broken tackle rate is sustainable. But if he is juking like that and he's that agile and he is breaking tackles, that tells me that his burst is there. He's healthy. His vision's there. So I think he, until that, hopefully that injury doesn't happen. Hopefully we get a healthy full season of Joe Mixon. Because, man, I am so in on him. I am so in on that volume he's going to get. And if he can stay healthy, I think you can lock him in as an RB1. And honestly, I think you're going to see Mixon on a lot of people's championship teams.
I hope not, because I don't have any Mixons. As long as I win other leagues, it's fine. Not in my leagues, hopefully not.
I just think because you see him on some people's teams, he's their RB2.
No, true. Yeah, I mean, certainly in redraft, he went 11 to 13, probably somewhere in there for RBs. In a lot of
but
cases,
some people stayed away because of these injury concerns, and if he can stay healthy and he sees this volume, I just think that
I was one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you've got those teams are combining him with top end talent somewhere else, a Wall, a Kelsey, good receiver. They've got Adams and Mixon.
Right,
so
they went heavy somewhere else, and knowing they could get Mixon later, and if Mixon produces that, where people got him. Like I said, I think you're going to see him on a lot of championship rosters.
Yeah, we will revisit Mixon, I'm sure, in week 4 or 5. We'll have a pulse check, I guess, every few weeks on Mixon because if he keeps this up, then I think I see good things in store for those teams that have him on their roster. So let's jump on to our next cheat of the week here. This is number 6. This is back to me. I'm going to go over to that Denver Jaguars game. We mentioned that a bit as a nice matchup, a juicy matchup for fantasy on the Denver side of things for that Jaguars defense that we all called it last week. We were like, yeah, Houston's going to score all sorts of points all over that Jaguars team. Of course, no, we were talking about the other side of it, that the Jaguars would score against the Texans, but it turns out the dumpster fire is in Jacksonville. I don't know what's going on there. But if you have any Denver Broncos on your team, this is a nice one. I'm looking at the situation, though. Jerry Jeudy got hurt last week. Just a shame. He looked really good at the start of that game. Gets injured. He's going to be out a good amount of time. He'll be back later in the season probably, but high ankle sprains are never good. But looking at this week and who is left on that receiving core, I'm actually intrigued by the guy who I think is going to benefit the most from this, and that's KJ Hamler to me. I really like KJ Hamler because he ended up he's going to get more playing time out of this. Tim Patrick was on the field. He got targeted plenty. I don't mind him. I think he's a decent play here too. I start any Broncos you want this week. I don't care. But Hamler is interesting because he ended up running 20 routes during this game. He's actually targeted on 20% of them, 4 in all, and he ended up getting the same amount of targets as Patrick. And, with Jeudy going out, they need a guy to play a little bit more in the slot, and I think Hamler is going to do that. And this matchup coming up this week against the Jaguars is going to be pretty good. We just saw Danny Amendola score a touchdown against them, who was in streak, sitting on his couch a couple weeks ago, not on a team. And he's also going to draw coverage from Tyson Campbell if he's getting those slot snaps, who is not a great corner for the Jaguars, so that's going to be a favorable matchup for Hamler. So I really like everything about this matchup for him. He's a deeper play here. There's a lot of good wide receivers. We're going to get to that a little bit more later in the show, but if you find yourself with Hamler on your team and you need to play a wide receiver or a deep flex, I think he's a good play. He's awesome in DFS. I think he's $3,800 on DraftKings this week. That's a fantastic play there.
Love that play.
So I really like KJ Hamler this week, but really across the board, good options there. I actually like both running backs in this scenario too, because I'm not sure whoever gets the touchdown is going to have the better day, but I think both of those guys can score. And I think almost every running back scored on Houston last week. So go with your Broncos, and I think they'll be a good play for you. What do you guys think about that, Evan? Any thoughts on the Broncos?
Yeah, I love your take on Hamler and DFS. I was actually going to target him. He was definitely going to be in a few of my lineups, as well as Tim Patrick. Personally, I'm going to be targeting the backs, like you said. I think, they're going to lean heavy on the run just because they are down Judy. And we saw, like you said, we saw the freaking Texans, the freaking triplets, the old man triplets, even, find the end zone last week against the Jaguars. So I think we saw Melvin Gordon have, 20 points last week on only 11 attempts?
Pretty much on one run to the 7.
Yeah, right. That one run saved him.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to see more attempts because, like I said, I think they're going to lean on the run game. So I think you're going to see another good week from Melvin Gordon, another 12 to 15 touches, few receptions, and I think he easily finds the end zone 1 or 2 times. So I'm locking Melvin Gordon in if I have him for sure. And I think, their schedule coming up, they got the Giants to start. They get Jacksonville this week. They get the Jets next week. So, the next 2 games, I really am going to be targeting some Broncos. And I think after that Jets matchup, I'm going to be doing what I can to sell high on Gordon because I really am a believer that I think it's a young man's game. I think Javonte Williams eventually will take over that backfield. But yeah, to your point, love Hamler and DFS, but for me personally, I'm going to be targeting Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, love myself some Javonte. Mike, last thoughts on Broncos here?
I agree with you about KJ Hamler 100%. I think the reason Patrick was more involved after the injury was because he was already into the game plan a little bit more than Hamler. Because Hamler is more like Judy than Patrick is. So now that he is out, I think that is 100% the thing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Patrick is a play, but I am all in on KJ Hamler.
Nice. I like it. All right. We are back to number 7 here on our list. This is your topic, Evan. What's your number 7 of the week here?
So this is a little bit to the Chargers offensive line, to their offense in a whole. But I just love how this offensive line looked for Justin Herbert and company last week. We obviously know they made all-season moves to bolster that offensive line, and it immediately netted positive results. Herbert was only pressured on 12.2% of his dropbacks. That was the lowest among all Week 1 starters. And they were going against arguably the best defensive line in football, and Chase Young and the rest of the WFT defensive front. Almost said Redskins. Rashawn Slater looks to be the truth. And in the back of his mind, I think Burrow wishes, he had a stud rookie like that blocking for him, and maybe even Joe Mixon does, so he can, run all the way to the fantasy championships for people. But no, seriously, I think if the Chargers offensive line is going to be this stout and Herbert is going to be able to pass from a pressure-free pocket most of the time, like he did in Week 1, I expect him to get in rhythm this week or over the next few weeks. And I think he's going to lead a top offense this year with top 5 upside, honestly. Unfortunately, I think it starts this week against my Dallas Cowboys, who unfortunately just lost their top pass rusher in DeMarcus Lawrence. They're going to be without Randy Gregory. So when you lose your top pass rushers, that doesn't bode well to get pressure on the quarterback.
I feel like Dallas loses their top pass rushers at the beginning of every year.
Yeah, or their top offensive lineman.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you don't have your top pass rushers, how are you going to get pressure on a quarterback, especially with a stud offensive line like that? So I think he's going to carve the Cowboys secondary up. He's just going to have too much freaking time back there to just sit back there, look pretty, and just pick who he wants. And, just have all day back there to light the Cowboys up. After that, he gets the Chiefs, who's another defense, that can be had. And then he gets the Raiders. So, for me, go ahead and lock Herbert and company in as top fantasy options the next 3 weeks.
Nice. Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to this. I start all your Chargers, lock them in. I have Herbert to Allen stack and Scott Fishbowl, so I'm pumped about that for this week. So that riding that stack, I guess, for the next 3 weeks. So love the Chargers this week. Mike, you must love the Chargers, right?
You already know that because I was going to talk about this if Evan wasn't going to. And all I have to say is I got Herbert in my top 5 for redraft and Dynasty. Like I said last week, I was against it, and I thought he wasn't going to do great against Washington, but I knew the rest of the season when he was going to be all right. All I have to say is Herbert to the moon, baby.
That's right. And he was awesome in that game. I want to say you got the fantasy part right. I just thought he was fantastic in that game. That wasn't a fumble. That was crap.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Even
when he got pressured, he still completed his passes. So, I just thought he was fantastic just from a football standpoint last week. Mm-hmm.
So, yes, Herbert to the moon for sure. Mike, let's get to number 8. What you got for us?
So, number 8, a little bit of an audible, but let's do this. So, let's go to the New England Patriots versus the Jets game. I want to talk about rookie versus rookie quarterback, Mac Jones versus Zach Wilson. I'm pretty much going to keep it nice and simple and nice and quick. Besides Tua beating the Patriots last year as a rookie, before that, the Patriots were 9-0 in their last 9 matchups against rookie QBs, and the Patriots are 10-0. They have swept the last 5 seasons against the Jets. I know the Jets are not good as a team overall, but still, in a division game, sweeping any team 5 seasons in a row is still a good thing to have. Zach Wilson was decent, but he did look shaky at times against Carolina. And I just think that New England is going to – this is not – if you can sit Zach Wilson in Superflex, if he is in your lineup for Superflex, this is the time to sit him, let someone else go in if you have a third QB, because I think New England is going to have their way with this game. I do think maybe Corey Davis is a play, but be risky about it.
Yeah, when Belichick usually eats rookie quarterbacks, for breakfast. That's normally they usually could figure them out pretty easily. Wilson very up and down last week.
Yep.
Corey Davis didn't seem to lock on to him pretty well, and he had 2 touchdowns. So I would be wary of starting Zach Wilson for sure. Going into this week versus the Pats. What do you think on this matchup here, Evan?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm looking to start either one of these guys. But I will say that Mac Jones for me looked like the best rookie quarterback of the bunch last week. He looked good under pressure. He completed, I think it was 75% of his passes. Even with pressure in his face, he connected with Nelson Aguilar for a touchdown. He showed command of the offense. He showed that he has the skill set to be developed into a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. And I think he couldn't have went to a better place than the Patriots and Bill Belichick to coach him up and turn him into that franchise quarterback. But as far as the matchup, I don't think I need to start either one of these guys. But I also, speaking to Zach Wilson, he started getting more comfortable as the game went on as well. And I think as the year goes on, I think eventually he will be a quarterback that you can look to start on your team, especially in Superflex leagues.
Yeah.
Yeah, go back to Mac Jones. I did. As a Patriots fan, I was very happy. He just looked he just looks like a professional quarterback. He just looks comfortable, moving around well, even threw well on the run, which he didn't really do necessarily well at Alabama. That was always when he had to move. That's kind of when it was his weak point. He'd lose velocity on his throws and things like that. He threw some nice balls on the run this week. I joked during the game that I can't believe we locked into Tom Brady 2.0. That was a joke. That's a big hyperbole. But it was just good to see, like, oh wow, like I feel like we have there's some stability there. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, for sure. And
Yeah,
like I
good
said,
signs.
Go ahead, Mike.
They both have bad dad bods, so hey, I mean,
yeah. Now
dude,
Tom Brady is some chiseled god with more hair than he's ever had before. It's like I don't
and
know.
he says he's going to play till he's 50. I mean,
yeah,
I'm done doubting that, man.
He's not human. I don't know what
I'm
I don't
done
know what he's
doubting that guy.
thinking, but I want them. But
I'm done.
But yeah, Mac Jones looked great, and he said, and not only like I said, the fit. But he just says all the right things too. I mean, even in the presser, he was like, "It's not about me. It never will be, and never
Patriots
should
way
be."
already.
It's just exactly. He's
already
buying
programmed
into the Patriots way. He programmed in him, like you said. Yeah, so great fit, and I mean, no one would have bet him to look like the best quarterback out of the rookies week one for sure.
No.
So.
See, Kyle Shanahan was right the whole time, but he just didn't take him at number 3.
Yeah, right.
All right, I'm gonna go over to number 9. This is the last one before our cheat of the week segment. This is going to be on the Detroit Lions. Little did we know coming into this season that Detroit Lions would be a mecca of fantasy points. I mean, just last week, they're getting smoked by the 49ers, but this team ran 92 offensive plays in regulation. 92. It was like the most of the week, and obviously they're playing from behind. But when are they not going to be playing from behind this year? That defense is not good. They're coming into a week this week where the Packers, which I don't know what happened last week, they were not. Maybe this is the week Rodgers is motivated and he's ready to win. It's in Green Bay. I expect Green Bay to put up points this week. If that happens, the Detroit Lions should be playing from behind, and they should be once again running a lot of offense and a lot more to the 3 people that were involved last week, because I don't think things are going to change. I thought this was going to be their offense coming in: Swift, Williams, and Hockenson. Targets last week: 11 for Swift, 9 for Williams, 11 for Hockenson. Like crazy target share for 2 running backs and a tight end. Just crazy stuff. I don't even remember when I've seen this type of share for those types of players on a team before. So, and honestly, Goff is a solid play too. He was scoring big points if you have Goff, particularly in Superflex, obviously. But, he's probably a solid play going forward, just because I think of the game script that they're going to have most of the time this year. So I really like them all this week. Williams is the only one that you'd have to think about starting. The other 2 are clear locks. You're starting Swift, you're starting Hockenson. I like Williams, though, this week a little bit over some guys like Tyson Williams, James Robinson, Mike Davis, Elijah Mitchell. I think there's risk with all of those guys. So I actually liked Williams' involvement last week with around 36-ish% snap share, which isn't bad, but just his involvement when he's out there and the targets that he can get, particularly if they're playing behind. I think he can be a solid play. That's basically that fringe back end RB2. So depending on your roster construction, you might be starting him there. And I don't think it's bad this week, because I think they should be playing from behind again. Quickly, guys, what are your thoughts on Detroit Lions, liking their fantasy point value this year coming from that team?
I don't think you could have said it better, man. You said everything that I was going to say. Just to touch on it and reiterate real quick is, people were trying to talk me and other people into other fantasy players into, go ahead and get the wide receiver 1 from Detroit. When I was like, no,
we did.
We all know
we did. It's TJ freaking Hockenson, baby.
Yeah,
we did.
The best
Right.
off. They are going to throw to their best offensive players. That is their running backs. That is TJ Hockenson. So you couldn't have said it better. I think you can, like you said, lock Hockenson and lock Swift in, and Williams is going to be a flex most weeks if you don't have better options. So couldn't have said it better. You pinpoint. You were right on it, Jay. So
nice.
Go ahead, Mike.
Love it. Mike, any thoughts there? And then if you don't, jump us into the cheat of the week.
So actually, I'm going to go with yours, and then I'm going to tie it right into mine.
Yes,
So
I love it.
Jared Goff is what I want to bring up. I am starting him. I said I benched Daniel Jones in a super flex league. The reason I benched Daniel Jones is to start Jared Goff, because I think Jared Goff, for the same reasons you brought up, is going to have a good game again, because they are going to be behind. And what did you say? 92? What was it? 92 snaps?
92 offensive plays.
Offensive plays. So
it's crazy.
So for my cheat of the week, Tennessee versus the Seattle Seahawks game. And the reason I want to bring the Detroit into this is this. Seattle Seahawks, the Detroit Lions ran 92 offensive plays. The Seattle Seahawks scored 28 points on 52 offensive plays. 40 offensive plays less. The reason I bring this up is the efficiency of that is not going to stay. You're not going to be able, they're going to have to do something else. That's not going to be sustainable. You're not going to score 28 points on long bombs to Lockett every single game. You're going to have to get Carson more involved. And the Tennessee Titans had a horrible game last week. They're going to try to I think they're going to try to slam Derrick Henry down Seattle's throat. Seattle they have a good defense, but they don't have a great defense anymore. And the reason I'm bringing this up is Tennessee is going to go into Seattle and upset the Seahawks. That is my cheat of the week. I am picking them on the money line to go into Seattle and upset them. And because I think they're going to come out with a vengeance. A.J. Brown, Mike Vrabel does not like to lose. Tom Brady called Mike Vrabel an a-hole. Okay? So I would not want to be them in the locker room after that loss. Book it, Tennessee. I just think Tennessee's going to win this game.
Vrabel's not used to lose. Yeah, he's come from the Patriots. We never lose 2 games in a row. That's know.
They're
gonna I don't know if I would bet on that, but I like it. I like the.
I would if I wasn't in California.
Yeah, man, it's hard to see not seeing Russell Wilson carve this freaking Tennessee defense up.
I mean, yeah.
With that being said, I have a ticket already, Mike, with the Titans on it. I took the Titans to beat the Seahawks because I can see it happening, man. And when you're a betting man, sometimes, as much as you can see one side, sometimes the value is on the other side. While it may be less of a chance, sometimes you just got to take a risk on that value. And I can see Henry getting off for a big game. I can see Tannehill having a bounce back game. I can see this being a shootout between both offenses. I don't think there's going to be much defense in this game. But I think it could be one of those games where it comes down to who has the ball last. And if Tannehill and the Titans end up with the ball last, I could see them driving downfield and winning this ball game.
Love it. I love the boldness there. I think I'm picking Seattle, but I like it. I like it. Let's go to you, Evan. What's your cheat of the week?
All right, man. This is the one time you'll ever see me beat up on my Cowboys this much. But I'm going back to the Chargers. It goes back to how much I like Herbert in this one, how much I like the offensive line, how much time I think Herbert's going to have to just seek and destroy this Cowboys secondary. So I'm going with Mike Williams. Mike Williams will be a top 15 receiver this week. Go ahead and start him. Like I said, this goes hand in hand with my Chargers take earlier and how good their offensive line protected Herbert in week 1. The Chargers have one of the highest implied team totals as they face the Cowboys. One of the highest totals on the week is the Cowboys versus Chargers. And like I said, the Cowboys defense is not the greatest. They let up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers last season. Like I said earlier, they lost DeMarcus Lawrence. They lost Randy Gregory. So you lose 2 defensive starters, and you can look for the Chargers to capitalize on that. So week 1, Williams saw 12 targets. Herbert is going to have all day to let plays develop downfield, which we know is Williams' strong suit. So, I just look for him and Justin Herbert to hook up on some big plays in this matchup. I don't see it too far off to see him and Herbert hook up for at least 1 touchdown, if not 2. I think Mike Williams sees the end zone at least once, if not twice. Mike Williams, top 15 receiver in week 2. Lock it in for my cheat of the week.
I like it. Any thoughts there, Mike, on Mike Williams?
I'm not as boldish as Evan on this call, but I do believe he's going to have a good game. I would lock him in. Obviously, I would lock him in as a surefire WR2, but I'm not as boldish as Evan, but I have no complaints about this because we all know that the secondary and the defense in general of Dallas is weak. Sorry, Evan.
No,
it's all good, man. Like I said, I don't like beating up on him, but in this game of fantasy, we have to be realist, and sometimes we can't have a favorite team. So when the matchup's there, the value's there. We got to see it.
Favorite team is your fantasy team.
Exactly. So it is what it is. I'll be yelling at the TV when Mike Williams is scoring those touchdowns, but at the same time, I think it's a possibility.
Yeah. I like Mike Williams as well, which ties into my cheat of the week. But what that usually means with Mike Williams is when you trust him, he grabs his back during the game and he walks off the field, and then you don't see him for 3 weeks. But hopefully that doesn't happen. But I've had a history with when I start Mike Williams, it tends to not go very well on the injury front. But hopefully, good health to Mike Williams this weekend. Mine is just these wide receivers, how deep they are right now on Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. Mike Williams is in the 30s. When you're thinking about your flex, it's all about the wide receiver to me right now. Last week, 61 wide receivers scored 10 or more points in PPR, while only 32 running backs got there. And then if you kind of go down the list and you try to compare where you're at, Anthony Schwartz was wide receiver 50 last week. He scored basically the same points as Austin Eckler, who was RB 29. So it's just you could go so deep at wide receiver and get production, and it's just striking to me. It's a cheat of the week from the standpoint of you have safety in wide receiver at the flex position to me. Running back, same thing happens every year. It gets thin, and it's hard to figure out your back end RB2s. So I think the argument for running back should usually be with RB2. If your roster is built pretty well, you should probably be playing predominantly wide receivers, unless you get a nice upside play from a running back in your flex spots. It's just so many good matchups, and I don't know, they spread it around enough where you have that many wide receivers that are getting into double digits. And even from there, I was looking at some of the good scores last week, and you'd be like, man, Jalen Waddle played really well, or this guy played well. They weren't cracking the top 12. It's like a lot of good scores from good players, and it's like, yeah, they're in 18 last week. It's just that position is so deep, and you could get such good value there. You just gotta, there's a lot to choose from, so you want to hope you get the high end wide receiver. You hope you hit Debo from last week, but just deep position, and I think that's where you should normally be looking at for your flex spot, depending on your roster. But
yeah, and speaking of that point, Jay, especially in DFS, like you're saying, I mean, that's where the value comes from. That's where those really, boom plays come from, or are those low end, those low owned, cheap wide receivers, because they have the opportunity to, even if they only catch, three passes, but they go for big plays and a touchdown, they climb you up leaderboards.
Right. Yeah, the PPR is huge. Just the catches there. Running backs seem to they have to get a touchdown. A lot of these guys. It's like the only way they're getting. And it's usually the studs
at the top of the leaderboards as far as running backs go. Unless you see an injury happen like Elijah Mitchell, but then a lot of people don't play him in DFS because they weren't expecting that. But the low end, kind of dart throws per se in DFS, to your point, is definitely what you want to look for and take your shots on in DFS, because that's those boom wide receivers are going to, like I said, climb you up leaderboards.
That's right. So that wraps up all of our top 10 for this week. Those are 10 sheets going into week 2. It should be another fun week of football this week. Wrapping up now, after we finished up our list here, why don't we go right around the horn again here? Just give me quickly where we could find you on Twitter and parting words for this evening. We'll start with you, Mike.
All right. You can find me on Twitter at DropTheMikeFF, and something I wasn't able to say, go Chiefs.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. You can find me over at Twitter at EV_RITT3 at EV_RIT3. And all my content is over at goingfor2.com. Obviously, you can find us every Friday over here at the Friday. I said that last week. The Friday cheat sheet, the fantasy cheat sheet on Fridays. I also going to be on the morning show with with Gladys on Sundays, as well as Hamid and Eric, who was tuning in earlier, as well as Gerson as well, talking some DFS and betting. And I actually have a over-under article coming out tomorrow, so be on the look for that at goingfor2.com. Other than that, once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next Friday.
Yeah, and I am at JAYC_DFF. You can find me there and all my writing at Going for Two as well. We all write for Going for Two, so that's where you can find us. And as always, thanks for joining us on the Fantasy Cheat Sheet. We're going to catch you next week. For Mike, Evan, I'm Jay. We will see you then. Enjoy week 2 of football. See ya.